guys think I'm cute. What are the first 4 words a redneck says when he gets off the plane in Chicago? Global warming my ass. Hey, that's my joke tonight. The last time I was in Chicago was about a month ago, and I love coming to Chicago. As Amber said, I work with Beam Global Spirits and Wine and help advise them on some of the brands on social media. One of the brands that I work primarily with is Maker's Mark, and we're doing some fun things. A lot of what Maker's Mark does is with their ambassadors program, so Google that, look that up, and check that out. If you want to know a little bit more about it, I don't want to turn this into an advertising spiel because that's not what you're here for. But when I was talking to Amber and Barbara about coming up here and talking, we threw out some ideas, and they said, the future of social media is something that might be interesting to talk about. And I don't know that I'm necessarily the most qualified person in the world to talk about this, but I have some thoughts on what the next 5 to 10, maybe 15 years are going to look like. And I think it's going to be interesting. And it's things that we ought to start thinking about because if you are advising clients on social media, if you are trying to develop social media programs for your own business, or if you are obviously doing social media for your company, these are going to be useful things for you to be thinking about because if you can be a little bit ahead of the curve, not even a lot ahead of the curve, just a little bit ahead of the curve, you're going to look a lot smarter and be a lot smarter and get paid a lot more money and keep your jobs and all that stuff. In this economy, we all want to do that, right?
Yes.
All right, so I jotted down a few things, and I'm gonna actually put this all together in a blog post that's much more succinct and meaningful because, as I told you, I work with Maker's Mark. I also drink Maker's Mark, and I've had a couple of those, so I want to make sure that there's clarity of thought in this, and so I'm going to put this on my blog tomorrow, and I promise I'll wait until I've drifted off into the non-alcoholic drinks before I write it. Or maybe I won't because then they're more entertaining. I jotted down a few notes, and I thought I'd just throw this out there. This is all food for thought for the future of social media. First of all, the one thing we need to keep in mind is the web is going to get much smarter. Semantic search and artificial intelligence are already upon us. It's already working. There's lots of great tools out there. There's lots of great programmers out there that are using these things with the softwares, with the browsers, with the hardwares that you're using today. And it's only going to get better. OpenID and movements like that are going to help our user experience along. Imagine, if you will, and I think the way that that's going to happen is the barriers between our social networks are going to deteriorate. We're going to log into the internet or to our browser or on our computer, and we're already going to be known to Facebook and Twitter and MySpace and Tipped and whatever other services are out there. What that means is, you could be having a conversation on Twitter or on Facebook, and imagine, if you will, you're talking about your car. And all of a sudden, Facebook has a little pop-up or some sort of maybe a targeted advertisement or something that says, hey, we've noticed that you've been talking about your Saturn a lot lately. Did you know there is also a group of people talking about Saturn on the I'mSaturn.com social network? And so all of a sudden, the lines are going to blur, and the web is going to be one big social network, and we're all going to be able to interconnect with each other on lots of different platforms. That's kind of how I see OpenID developing. And I think it will happen sooner rather than later. The open source movement is also going to become the norm as opposed to the exception. I think you're starting to see a lot more open source softwares become a lot more powerful than those that are closed because, quite frankly, you have the entire population of developers are available to work on them. So that makes software a lot smarter. I don't know how corporate America is going to respond to that. But I know that the open source movement is not a fad. It's not something that's going to go away. And the fact that if I have a great software idea, I can go online and find 5 or 6 developers to help me build it in an open source platform, and then 5 or 6 people that I don't even know can add to that. It only makes the web better. So what we're doing now, the amazing things we're seeing with software and hardware out there, is only going to get better as we go forward. But it's only going to go forward fast when we can find a way to make the mainstream acceptable. And the reason I say that is because even though we love, to a certain sense, targeted social advertising, even though social media developed because people ran away from marketing and advertising messages, and now we're seeing relevant, targeted social advertising pop up, and we like that, the mainstream people are still freaked out by it. They still think it's Big Brotherish. They still think the government is watching or Google is watching. And so we have to build their confidence that we're not tapping into your private information. We're only giving you relevant advertising or relevant content that you can then click through and go see. So we've got to do a better job of educating people, not just about social media, but about how technology works. And as we do that, I think you're going to see those barriers to entry come down for people who are just afraid of it. So we got to make it so that the mainstream doesn't get freaked out by it. Second thing that I think I see in the future of social media is I'm convinced, and this past election probably proves this better than anything that I can say. I'm convinced social media is going to change government, and I don't think it's going to change government because Barack Obama has a big social network. I think it's going to change government because for the first time in the corporate environment, companies are starting to learn that they have a direct connection to consumers. And pretty soon, someone in government is going to go, hey, we can too. And Barack Obama's done that a little bit. There's also opencongress.org, which is a website you can go to and track legislation and things of that nature. And so people like Mark Story, who is a fantastic, smart social media guy, he's mstory123 on Twitter. Mark Story works at the Securities and Exchange Commission as their digital marketing director. And he is a brilliant social media mind, and so people who are smart about social media are infiltrating those positions in government, and I think that's going to change the way we as the voters, as the electorate, as the population interact with our government. And quite frankly, no, I don't think we're ever going to vote from Facebook or from Twitter, but at the same time, I think we're going to have a government that is much more attentive and responsive to the public, because this is where we are, and this is where our voice is heard. And the politicians better get smart about it, or they're going to be like John McCain and get beat. So I think it's really going to change government. Social media is a perfect way to tap that collective intelligence and opinion on bills, issues, and as soon as politicians start to figure that out. When I saw my local congressman in Louisville on Twitter, I almost did a backflip, and look at me. I cannot pull that off. So it's just cool. If it's not mobile, it won't exist. Here's how I see computing probably 5 to 10 years from now, maybe sooner. There's not going to be laptops. There's not going to be desktops. We're all going to have some sort of smartphone. And instead of having a charger, instead of having a place where we dock that at home and dock that at work, I think we're going to have public docking stations in Starbucks and at movie theaters. And we're going to pull out an iPhone and we're going to plug it into a port, and it's automatically going to be hardwired to the internet or Wi-Fi to the internet, and you're going to have a keyboard and a monitor that takes that phone experience and just makes it bigger, and you're going to have those public stations everywhere. So if it's not mobile, if it doesn't fit on that smartphone, and if it's not programmed for that smartphone, it's not going to succeed, because that's where computing, I think, is going in the future. Now, yes, you're still going to have Milton down in the basement with the red stapler on the big machine programming shit. That's going to happen, okay? But at the same time, we are already a mobile society, and that's only going to increase as the technology gets better, as the G3 network becomes the G6 network, becomes the G10 network, whatever. And I think you're going to start to see companies go, you know what, we don't need computers anymore. What we need are hardware docking stations for iPhones and for smartphones so that people can have the full computing experience on their computer, which they put in their pocket and take with them wherever they go. That's a guess. I don't know who the hell. If anybody's developing that, I mean, great. If you're not, people are videotaping this shit. I get the copyright on this. Post this to the internet now so it's dated. Sure. Journalism will not die. Where's Daniel Hahnemann so I get an amen?
No, amen.
There you go. I know that's tough. Journalism will not die. Journalism is going to change. It's certainly going to be web-centric. It's going to have to be, because the world is going to be web-centric. But there is a need in every single one of us for reporting that is ethical, that is professional, that is thorough, and that is fair and unbiased. And as much as I am a blogger, and as much as I love bloggers, and as much as I will fight for a blogger's right to serve as a journalist and get a media credential and be a legitimate person who's covering an event,